Hey there folks, this is Dakota from Red Level, and today we're going to go over user-defined functions inside of Excel. So now that you can see my screen, have you ever been in Excel and wanted to say goodbye in a function and it just doesn't work? Well, today we're going to cover that with C#, and we're going to just dive right in. You're going to want to make sure your Visual Studio instance is open in administrative mode because this does write to the registry to register this automation add-in. You're going to go to File, New, Project, C#.NET Class Library. I'm going to name it 5 Minute Fridays. 5 Minute. I'm going to name it 5 Minute. Now once you've got this, the first thing you're going to want to do is right-click the solution and go into the properties. Right-click the project and go into the properties. Under the build events, you're going to want to check this register for COM interop box. What this does is tells it when it's compiled to run the register and unregister functions that we're going to define in a few minutes. So just for the sake of ease, I'm going to rename this class to 5. Another thing you're going to want to do before you even start is go into your configuration manager and make sure you set your platform to build for the specific version of Office you have. I have the 64-bit version of Office, so I'm going to select that here. Now that we're ready, you're going to want to start by adding a GUID to the top. Now this is a custom registration of where this class library is referenced within Windows. You can add a new GUID by going to Tools and Create GUID. And as you see, I've already selected 5. I'm going to click New GUID and then copy this. And once I exit, I can paste this here. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to rename this to My Functions. And you'll see we have some reference errors. We've got to add the references for system, runtime, interop services. Once we've got this GUID attribute here, we're going to add another attribute, a class interface attribute with a class interface type of auto dial or auto dual. And then we're going to set the COM visible to true. Now these are all registrations to tell the compiler how to handle this class library. Now I'm going to copy from here, but we're going to start with the COM register and unregister functions, which are also compiler details on how to handle things. This is the register function. You'll see red squigglies, that's okay. This takes and adds this class library given by the GUID to the Windows registry, telling it that it's an automation plugin and what it's for. Now I'm going to show you the unregister function. We're going to paste that next. Okay, now we've got the unregister function. You might see red squigglies again, and that's because we have to add our own private function called getCLSID subkey name. And this is just a string builder to return the name of what we want this subkey to be based on our GUID. Now again, we'll have to resolve some issues here. We need to implement the use Microsoft Win32. So once we click that, we should see all clear. Now, this is just the setup. Once this is done, we can get to the real fun of writing our own functions. Now, the functions are defined in here as the C# functions. You can just define what you'd like. So I'm going to define one called greet that just returns a string. And then I'm going to define one called isEven that defines or that returns a true/false value on whether the input is even or not. So let's get to that. Now this is just going to return a simple welcome from red level, just for fun. And then we're going to do a public boolean of is even. Nope, not quite ready for those. Oh, come on. And once we've got this, I'm just going to return when we've set the input. So the inputs here, once you define the input type in Excel, if your input type is incorrect, it'll tell you that there's an error. And so I'm going to do an integer of selection because we're passing in our selection. I'm going to say if selection modulus of 2 equals 0. So what this does is it checks if it's odd or even. And we're just going to save this and build. Now, there are a couple more steps to implementing this, and there are ways within here on the register and the unregister functions to, by default, add this into Excel via the registry settings. But I'm going to show you the step-by-step process here. So I'm going to just go into Excel, go to File, Options, Add-ins, and then Excel add-ins and go. Now we're going to browse and we're going to look for the automation servers. Now once you scroll through this, you should see our 5-Minute Fridays, A, B, C, D, E, F, 5 minutes .my functions, which is the one I just wrote and defined. And as you can see, I have a previous one here. I'm going to uncheck. So we're going to hit OK. And now I'm going to put just some numbers in here. And we are going to first go to cell 10 and click greet. Now you'll notice that by default it doesn't automatically show up in the IntelliSense here. See, we can see some of the functions, but greet doesn't automatically show up. That's another setting. But this does work. So if we hit enter, it says welcome from red level, which is really cool. Now let's go over to B1 and do is even and select our cell. And as you can see, we return false and true and false and true and false. Now this may have been a bad choice because Excel already has an is even function. But this is a great way to add things to Excel that's relatively easy. The deployment process is not quite as straightforward, but if you add the registry entries to automatically enable it, once this COM DLL is deployed, it runs that register function, adds itself to the registry, and it should be good to go. I hope that this was helpful and shows you a little bit of the capabilities of extending Excel with COM automation add-ins.